After the murder of Joe Masseria, Charles Lucky Luciano became the boss from 1931 to 1946.
Back in Sicily, my great-grandparents came from a town called La Carafridi, and there are two famous people that are from that town. The Sinatra family, Frank Sinatra's family, and another guy named Salvatore Lucania. And any mob people who know anything about the mob know that his name here in this country was Lucky Luciano. And my family knew the Lucanias. I could tell you they were abbracciante. They were people that worked with their arms. They were hardworking peasants. Lucky Luciano, his family were not bad people. I'm in touch with relatives of his when I go back to the town.
Lucky Luciano's crime family controlled lucrative crime rackets in New York City, such as illegal gambling, extortion, bookmaking, loan sharking, and drug trafficking. Lucky Luciano became very influential in the labor union activities and controlled the Manhattan waterfront, garbage hauling, construction, garment district businesses, and trucking. Everything was going smooth for 5 years, and in June 1936, Luciano was convicted on 62 counts of compulsory prostitution, and he was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in state prison. Lucky Luciano's underboss, Vito Genovese, ran the day-to-day operations.
That's where he allowed Vito Genovese to go ahead and take over his family, because he was never going to be able to come back to the United States.
Up until 1937, he was indicted for murder and he fled the country to Italy. So the crime family needed a new acting boss, and that boss would become Frank Costello. During World War II, after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government went to Lucky Luciano for help. The United States government feared submarine attacks, so the U.S. government needed the cooperation of all waterfront workers to prevent this. The government needed the mob's help to keep the New York docks free of strikes, sabotages, and any other problems that came up. Lucky Luciano still had control over all the waterfronts even while still in prison, so he agreed to help the government.
Help them so they help you. Lucky Luciano did it. When the war was on, he helped them with the war, and when they questioned him about it, he said, well, we're patriots. It's okay to be a patriot to help yourself, but if I did it, you'd kill me.
This put Lucky Luciano in position for him to bargain for his freedom. In return for all this, in 1946, instead of serving his sentence in prison, he was deported back to Italy. After Lucky Luciano's deportation, Frank Costello became the boss of the family.
Why did the Mafia get involved in Cuba, right? That's a question. A big issue was Lucky Luciano, right? After the Second World War, he was obviously head of his family, Luciano crime family in New York City. But the agreement was he was convicted. He was going to be deported. So in 1945, he gets deported after the Second World War back to Sicily, right? So he's back to Italy, and he starts developing a lot of connections. And he develops a connection where he develops a very good heroin connection from North Africa. So this is important because the Mafia was kind of more into gambling, extortion, and other stuff, but this would push the Mafia big time into heroin trafficking. Really big, lucrative money from them. So he wants to start, he wants to have a major conference. But he can't have it like he did in Atlantic City 10 years earlier, right? They have the major Atlantic City conference because he got deported now. He can't now. So he has Frank Costello acting for him, head of the Luciano family, which would later change names. So he decides that Havana is the perfect place because during Prohibition, Havana was used by a lot of people to bring in alcohol to the United States. Rum runners, right? Alcohol runners, bootleggers, right? Back and forth. So he knew those routes existed. He wants to have a major conference. It's called the Havana Conference in '46. So he goes out there to Cuba. He finally gets into Cuba. He has to be careful because remember, the United States doesn't want him anywhere near the United States, and they deported him. This will become a who's who, bigger than Atlantic City Conference of people showing up. They do it at the Hotel Nacional. So you have all the crime families come in to Havana in '46. This is December '46. They all come in there. You have the Trafficante family. But he also wants not just to be Italians, he wants to create an international crime syndicate. He wants to bring in the Spanish, the Jews. He wants to bring in Jewish families. He wants to bring them all together, working together.
That was the formation of the original Cosa Nostra. It was an organization called the Syndicate. The Syndicate was a combination of Jews and Italians, but then ultimately what emerged was the Cosa Nostra. The Jews didn't have the hierarchy like the Italians, as I explained to you. Jews were in it for just one generation. The sooner they could get out, they got out. They made their money, invested in a legitimate enterprise, and got out. Whereas the Italians, raise their children, in many instances, to succeed them.
So you have Meyer Lansky there. You have other Jewish gangsters there that show up. You have Carlo Marcello from New Orleans, his family, he's there. From the outfit, Sam Giancana represents the outfit, right? All the New York families come in. Even Frank Sinatra was documented to be there. So that he showed up. So you see a lot of ties. Sinatra always with the Mafia. It seems like he's always around those guys. So that's interesting. So three things come out of it. He says, I've got this major source from North Africa to bring heroin in. There's going to be a lot of money in there. They were first hesitant, but then he exposed how much they can make of it. And he says, yeah, you're right. Now that prohibition's gone, this is illegal, and this is a lot of money in it because the black market just feeds on it, right? With drugs, just like anything else. Alcohol, there's no money anymore. It's legalized. It's hard to make money. So this is where they go for it. He now can't be the head of the Luciano family because he's out, but he wants to be the boss of all bosses for the commission. There's a lot of back and forth about it. Frank Costello and others help him win the vote. He becomes the boss of all boss. So Lucky Luciano then becomes the boss of all boss. And then, of course, he wants to create with these other mafia families and these other groups, ethnic groups, working together to be together. So he says Tampa with the Trafficante family, because they were there, Junior and Senior, were there. You guys could be handling the drugs from Havana. It's going to come from Sicily, Italy, to Havana, Havana to Tampa, also from Havana to New York City. The New York City families will handle that, and from Havana to New Orleans, and then you'll have the Marcello family take care of that. So he has a pretty good network. What's going on there, and they thrive. They thrive not only with the drugs, but they build a casino mecca gambling out there in Havana, and it's mafia owned.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. This clip came from my documentary series about the rise and fall of the American Mafia. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to watch each episode as they come out.